Well, welcome to another session of All Things ADAS. I've got a couple of folks with me today. I've got Spike, or in other words, James Rodas, and I've got Don Vitito. And Don, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and where you work and go from there.
Sure. My name's Don Vitito. I am the fixed ops director for Woodhouse Auto Family in the Omaha, Nebraska area. We have other locations outside of the Omaha metro area as well. We have cover a lot of different variations of brands from Hyundai, Nissan, Mazda, all the way up to a Porsche and Bentley Maserati.
Nice. And you've got probably 24, 23,
24.
24 stores. So
Yep.
pretty good sized organization.
Pretty
And
good
how long
size.
have you been with Woodhouse?
I am going on 10 years next month.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
How about that?
Okay.
Yeah.
And
It's been a
Spike,
great.
how about you?
Let's see, I'm in my 38th year in the industry. I've been everything from a body technician to a combo guy to a calibration guy, and now focusing mainly on calibrations. Been doing calibrations since about 2014.
Okay. And you're with OEM Calibration, and you're associated with Woodhouse.
I am. That's the daddy company.
So getting back to how you two kind of interact with each other, tell me how OEM Calibration is involved with the Woodhouse dealership level, and why you have two different companies, or what started that. And either one of you can, probably both of you can talk about that.
I can talk about the beginnings. The way this kind of started was, in Blair, we'd been doing our own calibrations for a long time at a pretty high level. And when we kind of saw that the other locations were using outside entities or our dealership, we noticed some things that we didn't love as far as covering our liability. So at first, we honestly started this company for us. And now we're in 16 different markets and helping, I think it's 798 shops in those markets right now, and still expanding because we do a niche that nobody else does. We use all OEM equipment, just like the dealership does.
Yeah. And we use OEM calibration on the mechanical side and the body shop side. So we have 3 body shops within Woodhouse Auto Family. And Spike mentioned earlier, Blair, that's Blair, Nebraska. And then we have a couple of body shops in the Omaha area as well. And so it's very convenient and helpful for us to have this relationship with the OEM calibration group. So when we need inspections done on the ADAS systems, we can easily contact OEM calibration, and they will come on site, or we will take vehicles over there to do the calibration of the units. And also on the mechanical side, if we got to take a bumper off or something like that, I mean, like on Porsches, just to change the air filter, some of these units, you got to take the bumper off just to change the air filter. And when you put the bumper back on, those need to be recalibrated. And so the OEM calibration has really performed well for us, and it's just been a good prop, and it's just really worked well.
Well, you brought up a couple things that create a lot of questions in my mind. Was this transaction or transition to having an outside, I'll call it an outside company, because it really is, but was it easy for the body shops or your mechanical shops to let somebody else do those calibrations, or tell me, was that something that was an easy situation for that to take place, or was it hard, or what were some of the challenges?
Well, no, it has not been easy. I mean, it's been a challenge. First off, it's why are we doing this? Why do we have to adjust? Just because we take the bumper off and put it back on, why do we have to send it back over to calibration? Because it's an extra step, and there's more cost involved, and so on and so forth. But as I always tell people, when you watch the commercials on TV, they used to spend a lot of time on the design of the vehicle, the features, the dashboard and all that stuff. But if you watch a lot of the commercials today, what do they typically show? Somebody walking in front of the car and how the car automatically parks, or self-automated parking, or something. You got like one of the brands, and I won't say it, but you got some guys that are driving down the highway clapping their hands, singing a Queen song behind on the back of the vehicle. I'm not saying that that's something that we want to promote. However, what's controlling that? ADAS.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And, and if we don't do things right, that commercial is going to show a truck going off into the ditch.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so trying to convince our internal resources to add this step in to get calibration, it has not been an easy task, but I think we've come a long ways, and people are realizing, but it takes people like Spike to partake in discussions with our people. And it's just, we just keep reiterating the fact of how important this is. And it's really about the safety of our
Right.
And I'll add a little bit, their service guys, they know how to do it all. We're very specialized. So we are ultra experts when it comes to ADAS. So to us, this is like your transmission guy or, those guys that are specialized in your dealership.
right.
They're not going to do everything. They're going to focus on one thing, and that's what we do. So I think we bring a different level of experience and expert to that because this is all we do. We eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that there's a lot of stores, or I should say dealerships, but it's not just dealerships, just, whether any shop for that matter, dealing with these cars now. I would like to relate it no different than if you've got to have a windshield replaced on a vehicle. We don't ask a mechanical technician to do that job. And typically, even in most body shops, unless they have their own glass section, they don't do it themselves either because they see that as a specialized item. They certainly don't do an upholstery job or sew up some stitching. So this is no different than that. It's highly specialized. I had I'll say an opportunity to be at a dealership down here in Florida last week. And I got an opportunity to visit with the manager, and they have a body shop. And I just simply asked them, they don't know who I am from a hole in the wall. But I says, what do you do for calibrations? Well, we have a spot in the shop that we lay out all the targets and stuff, and then we go ahead and do it. Is your floor level? Well, certainly floor is level. Absolutely. So I'm envisioning this situation, when they have to do a calibration, they set up for it, which is probably in the middle of the shop, which is inconvenient for everybody. And then I also asked the service advisor, said, so do you guys work pretty closely with your body shop? Oh, that had nothing to do with them. Well, that means that really works out well for calibrations, as I'm envisioning.
Sure.
But I asked the manager, I said, so if you've got a job from the body shop that needs calibration, how do you handle that? Whose ticket does it go on? Is it go on the body shop's ticket and then you guys just work off of that, or do you guys write your own ticket and then sublet it? And I got this smile from him as well as the shop foreman that was there. They said, well, we're having a little bit of an issue right now because everybody wants to get their cut of the pay on that. So it's a fight between what ticket we write it on and who gets paid for it. And I'm thinking, and this is the situation that we can't figure out. And the calibration is what's going to suffer as well as the customer.
Yeah.
And that's the reality
exactly.
what happens in most, and I'm going to guess in a lot of dealerships.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Agreed.
I think this is just a nationwide, probably a worldwide issue, and it's nothing new.
No.
I mean, it's been around for years, right?
Yeah.
However, but Jerry, you just mentioned the windshield. I mean, think about it. Just even 10 years ago, how many windshields could just be pulled out and another one put back in by the body shop, and there was no ADAS involved with that. We didn't have no sensors. Now in today's world, I don't even know what the percentage is, but I can't imagine. It's got to be a high percentage that a lot of these windshields require OEM or calibration, right?
Yeah.
It's anything brand new automatic.
Yeah.
100%.
Right. But I'm thinking about just, we still have lingering models that are coming through, from the past that are still coming through that don't require it, but the majority has to be.
I think I just read a statistic earlier today that was something like 92% of cars on the road
Wow.
Yeah.
have
Wow.
some sort of calibration that needs
That
done.
doesn't surprise me. That's great. Yep.
And now you think about that, and now you think about a dealership is one thing, and I'm not saying that's better or worse than an independent shop. But the reality is you go to an independent shop and they're working typically on, they can be working on anything. But the problem is that, they don't always have the information that the dealership has at their level. And a lot of times they're not even aware that a certain repair may even need a calibration.
Right.
And And now in their minds, in a lot of cases, if there's no check engine light, they must be good. So down the road it goes. Poor customer has no idea. And you don't really find out that there may or may not be an issue until another incident takes place. And now we're talking about liability, and now we're talking about lawsuit,
Exactly.
which nobody wants to play that game.
No.
But that's the reality of what's taking place. So, I don't know, these cars have gotten so sophisticated and so, I'll just say very touchy, because there's not a lot of wiggle room on getting it wrong. It's got to be
Exactly.
right.
Right.
So,
Right.
a couple of things are there any self-calibrating vehicles?
But yes, there are. Chrysler's pretty heavy. Tesla's pretty heavy. GM has some options that are self-calibrating. So the Chrysler's blind spots, bumper sensors, they're all plug and play. We don't do anything to that. Now the
Okay.
cameras in the windshield and the front radars, those are still require a calibration.
Yeah, I was going to say there's portions of these units that can be calibrated without or automatically calibrated, but typically I believe the majority of the vehicles that are out there do require a manual. I guess you would call it a manual calibration. Is that what you would?
Mhm.
Yeah, either static or dynamic.
Static dynamic calibration.
And
Right.
I think one of the numbers I just saw, 86% of all DRP estimates, so direct repair program
Mhm.
estimates that were written in the third quarter through CCC, 86% of those needed at least one calibration.
And then the real question in my mind is, of those 86%, did 100% of those get a calibration?
No, that number is much worse.
See, that's the part that's scary. That's to me.
I want to say that number was 52%.
Wow.
Actually had a line on the estimate that said at least one calibration was getting done.
So to say this in simple terms, of all the shops that are doing a repair on a vehicle that require a calibration, only 50% are actually getting done.
Yep.
That's assuming that they're done right.
Correct.
And that's a national report out.
Yes. Yeah, that just came out from CCC, which is the largest estimating company in the United States.
Wow.
Wow.
So scary.
It
Yeah.
is scary. Yeah. And that's why, we are trying to do everything within Woodhouse to continuously make this the forefront, and it's really about awareness and holding people accountable.
Mhm.
And we feel that we're doing a good job, but I believe there's always opportunity for continuous improvement, and we keep working on it. And having Spike and his team locally available too has helped out tremendously.
And it's been really
He's
cool.
always a phone call away.
It's
Yeah.
been really cool getting to deal with the senior level managers through the service department and educating them so they can pass it down. And, just like anything, there were senior managers, some got it quicker than others and understood
Right.
the value, and some it took a little while, and that's fine. I mean, human nature is we're all a little different. But it's been pretty cool to see that adaption and, okay, this stuff does matter, and, why we are specialized in what we do.
Well, it's so important to have that communication between all the departments, and it's not just the body shop and the service department, or in this case OEM calibration. It's with the sales and the used car department as well. I mean, obviously they're bringing vehicles in, and they need to understand all of these things as well, so they don't get blindsided. And all of a sudden now they think they have X amount of dollars in a car, and all of a sudden that whole picture changes.
Right.
Extremely important. So for me, this is the fun stuff here. I got to ask a couple questions, and I know, Spike, you and I talked a little bit about this, but the rest of the viewers haven't heard this. But so I love modifying vehicles. That's something I always love to do, and I know just from being at the dealership, that's a big request, especially when you're dealing with trucks or Jeeps.
Yep.
And so a lot of people, including me, I like to raise a Jeep. So, what do you tell people when they want to have their truck lifted? Obviously, that's going to have some effect on a calibration. So, how do you deal with that at the dealership? I don't know. Either one of you can take that one first.
Well, I'll take that one first. So typically we've identified technicians within Woodhouse that do the lift kits on the Jeeps or on the trucks and everything, and they understand that when we do modifications to these units, calibration is required. And so it's not like we have every technician that's in our shops that have the opportunity to put these lift kits in and everything. So that's it's those people that have been involved with these lift kits. They completely understand the need for OEM calibration.
They're the transmission guy. They know what the heck they're doing.
They
when it
know,
comes to
right?
this.
That's just part of the process.
But at what point is there a limit? I mean, can I lift it 4 feet?
Well,
So here's something pretty impressive to me. Woodhouse took a stance a few years ago that 4 inches is the highest we'll go. That's the only thing that we can confidently say, yes, this is calibrated correctly. And it was really cool. I was on stage last year at SEMA about this very topic. And they're doing a lot of studying through the SEMA garage. In 4 inches, yes, it was fine. Higher than that, it gets a little wonky. And if manufacturers would give us access so we could change pitch and things like that in the computers, we feel we could do a quality calibration if we could change pitch angle of some of these things, but they haven't given us that access yet.
So what, if I'm understanding you correctly, what you just said is that the parameters within the setup of the manufacturer allows X amount of, I'll call it wiggle room, plus and minus tolerance. There you go. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. You get those big words. And so there's this small amount of wiggle room. And if you go and change a vehicle stance, whether it's lower or higher, outside of the parameter that they've built into it, now you can't calibrate it correctly.
Well, let's just think of a leveling kit. We've all seen, vehicles that are riding like this or riding like that because, a poor leveling kit or whatever. That's dramatically going to change what you have going on. We actually tried to fix a vehicle probably a month ago that was squatted like that. And we had to tell them this thing's never going to be right, because if you went to go up a hill, it would see the road at a different pitch, and it was applying automatic emergency braking.
No, you can't get too far that way. So
Right.
what happens with you take a guy like me that would be retired and old, and then I go out and I buy myself a nice F350 or 250, and I decide I'm going to pull a camper behind it, not a fifth wheel, but just a regular camper that's pretty heavy in the tongue.
Yeah.
And now the back end of that thing's down. Am I having a problem with my ADAS system now?
Absolutely could. And the way I've had it explained, again, we covered kind of the same thing, is when everything is correct, you have the right truck, you have the right displacement, for your hitch and all that, not too much weight in the back, it's still within parameters. Now, when you overload the tongue or something like that, it could definitely change what you got going on. And I know right now, we actually just bought a camper, so we're in all these camper groups on Facebook, and there's people that comment on this, and they're turning off some of those systems, but we hear that you will not be able to turn them off in the coming years. It will be mandatory that they're on.
Okay. It's interesting. I'm not saying this to be mean to anybody. In the days of doing an alignment, once in a while we'd have a problem with the customer would come back and complain about the alignment didn't seem to be right. And then you discover that they have a spouse that's, 450 pounds, and you line the car for them not being in it, or the driver might be that big. You actually have to put them in the vehicle to align it. So I don't know this, but I'm going to have an assumption that if my spouse is a little bit too big, I might have a problem with my ADAS system too. They probably have to have a fat mode. I don't know.
And that's real. When we do a calibration, we have to unload the car completely. So we need it like it came off the showroom. So no junk in it, no nothing. Certain manufacturers say you got to have a full tank of gas. Some manufacturers say you need somebody that weighs at least 165 pounds sitting in the driver's seat, or that kind of weight. So all of that really can come into play depending on who you have sitting where.
Yeah. How do you deal with, whether it's Porsche or any of the brands that have air ride? When they have the air ride and vehicles going up and down, depending on what they're doing with it, how does that work? Anybody got any thoughts there?
You have to put it on the standard ride height. That is part of the procedure is it has to be the standard ride height before you calibrate it.
Okay.
So again, when
Okay.
you go up or down based off of that, that's part of that tolerance that is built in.
Okay. Okay. How about, and I don't know this, but I do know that there's an awful lot of updates to our PCMs and flashes that take place in mechanical shops. And I was more curious about this than anything, but I don't know. Do any of those flashes that any of you are aware of, do they, any of those require a recalibration at all? Have you run into it?
Not specifically recalibration, but it could also lead to other programming. Like if you do an ECM now, you got to program 2 keys, whether you have 1 key or not. If you only program 1, you can never program a second. Certain manufacturers require you to have 2 keys when you program it, or you flat out can't program it. So yes, any of those that you do can lead to other programs, but not specifically a calibration.
Interesting.
One of the things I do want to bring up too, the spike that you and I have worked on, where we do have customers that they understand that if they go over 4 inches, that there could be a liability on their part, not on the dealership part. And we have a disclaimer that we've got written out that is presented to the customer as well, and letting them know, and it's documented in our system with the customer's information, and that they agreed that we will not be liable. Let's just say they wanted a 6-inch lift kit, and they will sign off on it. And we keep that on file just to protect the company as well, but to also note that the customer has been informed of this situation, and they get a copy of it as well.
And I do think in that instance, it has to be approved by the director of accessories. Right. Otherwise, we won't even do a 6-inch. So I believe it has to be specifically approved by him, probably to make sure that all the steps are followed.
Yeah. There's a process on that. It's interesting. We had at one of our stores, we had a customer that was asking for a lift kit that was greater than 4 inches. And then we told him about the liability falls on him, that the sensors may not work properly, and he backed off. He lowered it down to the 4 inches. He didn't want to carry that liability. So that kind of shows you that customers may want that look and feel and everything, but this individual realized the safety aspect of it and made an adjustment on his personal.
He probably had grandkids, because if it was my kids, I'd be like, I'm good with the 6 inches. My grandkids, it's like, I'll just leave it standard.
Yep. That could have been, I don't know, but that was an interesting. It was an easy. It wasn't a sale. It was just informing to the customer of here's the situation if you go greater than 4 inches. And he was a gentleman. And he goes, no, hey, just let's not do it. I don't need that then.
Smart man.
I know, being up there in Nebraska, you probably don't get a lot of it. I can see the lifting side of it, but you probably don't get a lot of folks that are trying to see how low they can get the car. Otherwise you get stuck in snow half the year. So
at
least you don't have that deal. I know down here, some of the cars that I see are, at least they get the sand off the road and they go by. So, but pretty crazy. So what are some of the biggest challenges as far as the training side of this then? Because, if I'm a technician, which at one time I was, it's one thing to learn, what I'm doing today. And I got to always retain that information. But next year, everything changes and everything's, gotten more complicated, and there's more stuff on top of what I already learned. And this continues on and on and on and on and on. And how do you keep up with that kind of training, Don? And your situation's different than Spike's, because Spike, you're doing the specialized stuff, and Don, you're dealing with all the other stuff, so to speak.
Well, we have it where it's our technicians. Well, first off, we educate the service managers that there is a way to contact the OEM calibration team. And so if they are working on a vehicle, if there's any sensors that have been tampered with, we need to inform. We send a request over to the OEM calibration and have them look up if we need to have the vehicle calibrated, since that sensor or that area has been tampered with. And they reply back. I mean, it's immediately to let us know that, it does need calibration or no calibration required.
And that's not a phone call either for you in your case, is it? You do that through the computer.
Yes.
So you eliminate the phone call time. And the waste of time there. So,
Right.
and now let's say you put a request in and you do get an answer back that it does require a calibration. Tell me what that realistic timeline looks like. So now you've identified that you've got to have something done, and my guess is don't really run into too many times that you have will show up 3 days later. Everything's now. So how does that work? How quickly is there a response? And tell me a little bit what real happens there.
Well, Spike, there's your team made a commitment that you'd have a response back in a certain time. I don't remember what the response time was on that. I apologize.
No worries. So typically speaking, Jerry, if we're told at noon a car needs calibrated, typically we're going to get it done that day for sure within 24 hours. Now, I would love to say nothing ever slips through the cracks, but we do get an occasional one that slips through the cracks. And sometimes it's our side and sometimes it's the other side, right? Sometimes they think they hit the button that told us to come do it, and they actually did not. We just had one of those last week, and I was able to show them, yeah, it was never really hit. But, we do our best no matter who it is, not just because it's our parent company, but any customer out there. Our goal is within 24 hours. And again, generally it's the same day.
Now, I don't know if you have this number in your head or not, but of those calibrations, how many can be done mobile where you're going from OEM calibration to the dealership or an independent shop, whoever, and how many have to be done where you've got to set up targets and really take the time to go through, I know some of those where you got to have it in on your level floor and you've got to have it in the right environment. You just can't do it in a parking lot. What's the difference between the two as far as how many?
Dynamics we can pretty much do anywhere. So, those we generally get done at location. We take our setup photos and pre-scan it and things like that. It's when you get into the statics that you it's hit and miss, right? Some of them need a very large footprint. Ford 360 mats need 40 foot by 50 foot. Not a lot of places have room for that. So generally those are going to come back to home base in whatever city that we're in. But you can do some 360s, you can do some blind spots. It's just so all over the board depending on the size of the shop. If it's a newer shop, you generally can find a level area without drains and metal all around. So it's too hard to give a number, but it's just kind of all over the board. But we will not do one in an area that we don't feel very confident in. Whether the shop wants us to do it there or not, it's going to come back if it needs to come back. I mean, and integrity is one of the big things that we try to focus on.
I think a lot of people don't realize too that it's not just the area that you have to have and the environment's got to be right, but the light has to be correct. You can't have sun shining in on an area, which can mess up the calibration, which I find very interesting because people that say that just do them in the parking lot. Well, maybe you can if it's not sunny out. Maybe you can if it's nighttime. But that can be a challenge too for that a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, we're actually dealing with this at a location that we're just getting ready in Indiana, I think. No, Ohio. We're just talked with them. Okay, we want lights on 3 different dimmers because some manufacturers want less light, some want more light. So perfect is if you can have 2 or 3 kind of staggered, right? This is circuit 1, circuit 2, circuit 3, so on and so forth, and you can dim those lights to get the perfect for whatever that manufacturer is.
Do you actually measure the looms when you're doing those?
Yeah, so it's 1,000 lux is what we go off of. That's ideal to us, and then we can adjust from that.
Okay. Wow.
And we use a certain bulb that we like the best also.
Okay. So, Don, I know that you go to some of the local schools there in Omaha.
Yep.
And do you get an opportunity at all, or maybe both of you, do you get an opportunity to talk about how specialized the calibration is and or talk to the instructors to find out if they're even teaching any of this at the tech school level?
Yeah, absolutely. Spike, you and then a couple of our body shop managers have participated in these local community colleges, and that is definitely a topic that is discussed when talking to these instructors and the students.
In Omaha, we put on a presentation for 2 different colleges once a year. We do the same thing in other markets as well. we've never turned down an education request, whether it's for a shop, an insurance company, or a school. Shame on us if we do. We find time and make it work, and we feel it's that important to help educate everybody.
Yeah. Well, and I would think too that, the old thought of a mechanic is, comes home greasy and wore out and full of crap. And I would think that,
That's
the type,
changing.
oh, absolutely it is. But on the same token, if I want to be that guy that is the techie type of person and I want to have a pretty clean day, doing the calibrations as a specialty makes a lot of sense. Especially,
Absolutely.
no matter what you do, if you're very, very good at what you do and you really get into it and take it as a challenge to be an expert and a professional, you can do very well. You can do very well.
Absolutely.
And we
Agree.
have a bunch of master technicians at home base here. That's our tech help for our guys out in the field. We have 6 or 7 of those kind of spread throughout our regions.
Mhm.
So we love the mechanics that are just tired of crawling up inside there and turning wrenches. And like you said, backs are hurting, knees are hurting.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, that's why I went into management. My body was so beat up. It's like, well, I've got one option or I'm flipping burgers.
Well, and the problem is you'd eat them first, but um, what's the biggest challenge for both of you, would you say, when it comes to this topic in both your worlds? So what's the biggest challenge that you don't feel like you have a complete handle on yet? That's a constant battle.
Added cost.
I mean, Spike's added cost, or just the added cost of
So
the
I'm sorry.
calibration.
Yeah, that was too simple. It's the added cost to do the calibration. So,
To a job.
let's say, yep. I mean, it could be for on a customer pay, including like with internal on sales, where sales they never saw this line item before years ago. Now all of a sudden they're seeing this line item that OEM calibration is required. And, it's added cost. And as everybody knows, you try to keep the cost as less as possible when you're, for any customer, but you want to have the vehicle fixed right as well.
Yeah.
And that's been the biggest challenge that I see that we're continuously battling against is, what do we really have to have this done?
Well,
If we
and
do it, then it's going to add this cost, or or it's going to add time, to it. But I would say cost is the biggest challenge that we have in this.
Okay.
And just to expand on that, think of an alignment, 10 years ago, it was X amount of dollars. Well, now that alignment may mean that you need a calibration done. Calibrations aren't cheap. So do you pass that on to the customer for the same price? Do you make some kind of menu pricing? How do you make them understand that this is the right way to go? Or do they go to the place down the street that just has 2 bays and is doing it for a third of the cost and no calibration? They see a value in going there. They may not see a value in having the calibration done. So I think it comes down to a lot of discussions, explaining to the customer, hey, when we do this, this really does need calibrated also. You know how your car stays in the lane? Do you want that to keep working? This is what it's going to require to make sure that it's correct. And then the other side of it is educating, if it's sales or, other body shops for us, helping them understand the liability aspect and what you are opening yourself up to. And hey, it's your business. You do whatever you want. We just want you to understand, to cover your liability, you should send everyone into us. Waste our time. We don't care. That's our job. But we're fine with wasting our time.
Yeah, and I think
it's I think you said the key word, Spike. It was it's ongoing education. And we gotta, when we talk about the education, it's also about, in that education, what is the value of doing this? And the value is safety. And we just got to keep reiterating that that vehicles today is just so much different than the vehicles of yesterday. And these sensors is what why I couldn't imagine if we did not have sensors in some of these vehicles, and the death fatality that would have occurred. I mean, it has saved so many lives, and we need to do anything and everything as possible to keep safety at the forefront, and let everybody know that we got, sometimes for this safety, you got to pay for it.
Yeah.
And Don, you've gotten to go to SEMA and go through
Yes.
some of the education classes. Plus, we've been to the Exalta 20 groups, and the fact that more shops aren't seeking education, whether it's Collision Hub or SCRS or it just blows my mind that, to cut hair in the state of Nebraska, you have to take 10 hours of continuing education, and there is no requirement for things like this.
Yeah. Well, that education is, and education is half of it. The other part of it is, unfortunately, the auto industry, a lot of people look at bringing their car in and they're apprehensive because the first thought that they have is that I wonder what they're going to try to sell me that I don't need or want.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so they're already expecting you to do something that they don't want. And
Mhm.
then if you're trying to educate them, they might be listening to you, but they're not hearing you because their thought is that, Joe down the street doesn't try to do this to me.
Right.
So that darn dealership again, trying to take money from me that I don't need to spend.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
there's the challenge, and it's a
Right.
reputation, and and you got to have a relationship in order for them to get past that. And so it's all about relationship building.
Yeah, that-
And
Very valid point, Jerry. And with that, then you got the risk of losing a customer,
yeah,
Mhm.
after that, because then they do feel like we're trying to add things, more line items for them to pay for, and they just don't feel that they need it. That's why it's important that we, as the dealership, our employees, that we just need to help the customer understand why we're doing this and why it is a safety. We're looking out for the safety of them and their family,
Mhm.
who's
Yeah.
ever in that vehicle.
yeah, and that'll be an ongoing challenge,
Absolutely.
no matter what the
Yep.
topic is, unfortunately.
Yep.
But I know that can be very frustrating when you're trying to help somebody and they're looking at you in the idea that what are you trying to rip me off for? So part of that, the industry earned some of that. Not
Mhm.
every store, but unfortunately, the stores that have done a bad job of taking advantage of customers, we have to try to live
Right.
with and deal with it. So
Well, I think sometimes too, you have to remember not every customer should be your customer. There's certain times where you should probably say, "Hey, Bob, maybe you should go down the street." Now, hopefully that's a pretty small number,
Yeah.
but there's certain people, I can think back through my career and being like, "Yeah, I should not have worked on this person's car," but
well,
I was young and dumb and took it all in.
I think we always, we're in the mode of being in service, and we're here to help serve and take care of somebody. So, if the person's the right person in the job, our mindset to begin with is I'm here to try to help you and take care of you. And unfortunately, a lot of times you don't find out that you've run into that wall with that person until you've really invested a lot. And you hate to just tell people to turn around and walk away, because we're here to help serve. And that's the main aim. Once in a while,
Right.
you run into those people that don't want to be served.
Yep.
So, well, I don't think I have any other questions right now, unless there's something that either one of you wanted to bring up and talk about, but we're about out of time. And, but I appreciate both of your folks' time today. And this is
Thank you.
always fun for me to get a chance to visit with both of you.
Yeah.
Well,
And
we got to
likewise.
ask the last question. I've been thinking of this one, so.
this is scary.
Don, we always ask a stupid question. Favorite concert, favorite drink, favorite childhood memory.
Favorite childhood memory. I would say, wow, I would say fishing in Minnesota with
What lake?
Nice.
Do you remember
What's
what
that?
lake? Do you remember what
I
lake?
was up in Bemidji.
Okay, up by the
Yep.
Drake Strip.
Yep.
Yep. Not Bigfoot. Good grief.
Paul Bunyan.
Paul Bunyan, yes, and
Paul
the
Bunyan.
ox,
And
and
the blue
ox.
ox.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Jerry, what's yours?
I was raised in a poor family, and I don't really have any good memories at all. No, that's not true. I don't know if I have any. I would have to say I used to love going camping when I was young, and I grew up at that time, Williston, North Dakota, and we would go to the Black Hills or to the Glacier National Park, and it was always a challenge up there because you'd be camping, and it was more times than not you'd be dealing with some bears at night at the tent or at the campsite, and that was always pretty exciting. So I have to say that was a good memory.
How about you, Spike?
Mine would be played in hide and go seek with my my siblings and my cousins at my grandparents' house, down on 33rd and Walnut. And the neighborhood kids. We just had such a good group of kids. We'd have, if everybody was there, we'd have 12 to 15 people playing hide and go seek and red light, green light, and catching lightning bugs. Yeah, that's probably my favorite childhood memory.
Well, as long as they came to look for you, yeah.
Yes, yeah, there's a chance of that.
Your turn, and then everybody leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good. Well, again, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and we will be back together again. But appreciate your time, and thanks so much.
You bet. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Take care.